Okay, so I think that it would be a good idea to talk about what we're seeing right now in terms of the MAGA party or group turning against each other over these Epstein files. Now let's talk about the narrative that you're getting versus what is biblical, because you can get really caught up in the worldly narrative, the limited understanding of what's going on right now. So if you've been paying attention to the news, here in The False Prophet, Pam Bondi is claiming that there are no Epstein files. I mean, there are Epstein victims that could be interviewed, and a list could be ascertained. It's not that difficult. So now, all of a sudden, there's a different narrative forming, and I don't understand why everyone's so up in arms about this, because there are other ways of getting this information. But people get so focused on one thing. I mean, if there's no list, okay, fine. Interview the victims then. I guarantee you those victims will be willing to talk. But here's what's going on. Epstein had a blackmailing campaign, and he was working with Mossad in order to blackmail American politicians. So maybe Donald Trump is trying to cover up for other politicians. I don't really buy that personally, because frankly, just like with the USS Liberty, what happened with the USS Liberty, how the United States was willing to not give justice to Americans and brush this under the rug, knowing that that the IDF intentionally, they had the proof, they had the recordings of them knowing that that was an American United States Navy ship. They ruthlessly killed Americans, and they knew what they were doing. They did it on purpose. And then that was it was swept under the rug. And the United States swept it under the rug. They were the ones who swept it under the rug in order to protect this image that they created of the Antichrist, this counterfeit Israel. So Israel is more important. It's never going to be America first. It's always going to be protecting the image of the Antichrist. So if Mossad was behind what Epstein was doing, and this list got out, and we wanted to understand, then the next question is going to be, well, what was his motivation? The American people are going to want to keep digging. They're going to want to keep understanding what are his connections, what's going on here. And once you understand that Israel is behind this, behind the blackmailing campaign, then there's going to be questions. Then there's going to be resistance to the relationship between the United States and Israel. So we've already been seeing division within this administration. And this is what I want to talk about within Scripture. So what I've just spoken about, that I don't see in Scripture, but this is my hunch. Based on what matters to the United States, based on the fact that this guy who had no importance whatsoever got away with what he was doing and had all of these relationships with high-profile people. I mean, who was he? Absolutely no one. How did he get away with this? Because he had direct connections to a foreign government, and that foreign government is Israel. So one thing that we know in Scripture is that there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, money being the root of all kinds of evil. There's a religious narrative that's fueling this Antichrist system. And here we go. There's something else that we are starting to see unfold that seems to also be related. And we need to pay attention. But we need to pay attention correctly, not getting caught up in worldly narratives by people who do not have biblical understanding of what's going on, because what they're focused on is you're trying to protect the pedophiles. I don't necessarily buy that. Trump's on the list. Maybe so. Maybe that's also part of it. But what we've seen in the United States in this false prophet is that they are willing to cover up for Israel over protecting our own people here in the United States. And we saw that with the USS Liberty. So here's the thing. When that starts to become more of the hot topic issue, is why are you covering up for Israel? The left-wing media that is really coming out over this, and also the right-wing media is also coming out over this, but in particular, the left-wing media is feeling really self-righteous right now. Both evil, by the way. The right, more evil, because they claim to see. Okay? Let's look at it from a biblical perspective. And what Jesus said, because you claim to see, you're guilty. If you did not see, you wouldn't be guilty, but because you claim to see, you're guilty. But both of these, did you not notice that Kamala Harris was very pro-Israel? It doesn't make a difference on the right or the left, because all are going to receive this mark of the beast and worship that image. All whose names have not been written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So it doesn't matter either way. The left is funded just as much as the right. Actually, from what I saw, the breakdown that I saw, at least on one report of donations that were made, the left actually receives more money. But see, what the right has going is that they're also receiving donations from organizations like CUFI, like Christians United for Israel, and many counterfeit churches, etc. So they're not necessarily receiving direct funds from or lobbying groups like AIPAC that are as significant as what the left was receiving. My point is that both are funded, both are bought. Money is the root of all kinds of evil. Both are bought. And the same thing goes for media. Why is it that mainstream media is censoring what's going on in Gaza, and we're having to go to other news sources? I mean, I'm listening to Turkey news or Iranian news. Like, what's going on there? Why do I have to go and listen to other people because my country cannot report correctly? Because my country is bought. And so are their news sources. And so there are certain things that they can say and certain things they can't say. And no one seems to be able to make even a critique of Israel without saying October 7th was the worst day in history. No one ever says the Nakba was really bad. They don't qualify that statement before they go and make another statement. Why are they doing that? I think it's really weird. Like, if I'm going to say something and someone starts bullying me into saying, wait, before you talk, before you open your mouth, how do you feel about October 7th? I'm like, what? Why? Why is that the qualification for me being able to say anything? No, I'm not going to play that game. So you can see that mainstream media is bought. And so when they catch on that the one that's really being protected is Israel, you're going to see the hypocrisy. God is going to, he is going to reveal the hypocrisy. Just like I told you a year or two ago, I think it was maybe even 2 years ago, that when Donald Trump and the right came back into office, that you were going to see the hypocrisy of what people like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, all those people, how much money they made on making fun of the LGBT community, which, let's be honest, the whole situation was nuts, but God made that happen in order to expose how much more nuts this is. Because at that time, when people were saying, you want me to unalive myself because you won't acknowledge that I'm a zebra, right? You want me to unalive myself because you won't go along with my insanity. And everyone was like, oh, that's nuts. And it was like so self-righteous about it, right? But then what's going on here? You want me to unalive my, you're calling for the annihilation of my people because you won't go along with our genocide? I'm sorry, that's way more nuts. I would rather hang out with a human thinking they're a zebra than these murderous, disgusting people. No one's calling for your annihilation. We're calling for you to stop annihilating people in Gaza. We're telling you, no, we don't go along with this narrative that you're the chosen people, because first of all, you don't act like chosen people. And second of all, because you're not the Israel that God's talking about in the Bible. Not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. Not all who are descended from Abraham are Abraham's children. Jesus directly said in the book of John, acknowledging that a group of Jews were descended from Abraham, and yet if they were Abraham's children, they'd do what Abraham did. Okay, so the Bible has already clearly established that this has nothing to do with descent or ethnicity or your 23andMe. And Paul clarified what a Jew is. A Jew is one who's circumcised in heart. This is not the Israel of the Bible, and I don't have to go along with that narrative. And I don't have to qualify that I thought that October 7th was a terrible day. Otherwise, I'm calling for your annihilation. Otherwise, I'm an anti-Semite. No, this is not the truth. And I'm not going to go along with it. But you see the hypocrisy, and you're going to see it even more. You're going to see it because this has already been put out there. And people are now asking questions. They want to understand what was the relationship between Israel and Epstein. And it's pretty clear what it was. And it should be clear that what the United States is doing, what this administration and this DOJ is doing, is they are covering for Israel. That is more important to them than who's on that list. They're trying to shut the whole thing down so that no more questions are asked. Because if you give any information, more information is going to be required in order to get the full picture. So they're trying to just shut it down. Oh, we don't have any information. Let's go to Daniel 11. So what you see right now happening in as far as the people, this divided kingdom that is even within the false prophet inside of the divided kingdom of the Antichrist, is that his own people are turning on him. Isn't he posting social media posts about his boys? What is this, a gang? Your boys? What does that even mean? This is an administration. This isn't like these aren't your boys. I mean, it's just, there's no end. How uncouth and how unrefined this man is. Just running things like a mob. And the amount of gaslighting, like, I'm going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but here's what I'm doing through these ICE raids, through militia. Here's what I support. And in what world? This world, apparently, you can get a Nobel Peace Prize for being the opposite of peace. The opposite of a peacemaker. It's just sick. Daniel 11, verse 21, he will be succeeded by a contemptible person who's not been given the honor of royalty. He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure and seize it through intrigue. Okay, this is Israel invading the kingdom that has been in power, which is the United States. Then an overwhelming, and invading it not in the sense of like a literal army goes in to invade, but invading it, as it says here, he's invading it through intrigue. He's seizing it through intrigue. When last I checked, that's not a typical war weapon, is it? Just like when it says the Antichrist is invading the beautiful land. What it's doing is it's infecting. It's bringing its doctrines in. It's setting itself up in the beautiful land, in God's people. Then an overwhelming army will be swept away before him. Both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. Okay, we're talking about a covenant with many. We're talking about a covenant that is made within the Antichrist. So, agreement that is made within the Antichrist. Now, this army of NATO, that's a covenant, right? That's a covenant between the United States and Europe, primarily. And all of these little agreements that are made that are anti-Christ, anti-covenant, should be understood as the covenant, right? That's the anti-Christ covenant. This is the agreement with death that is spoken of in Isaiah, and all of the things that the Antichrist stands for. Now it says both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. The United States will still have power, but it's going to be succeeded in power by Israel. And that has actually already happened, especially when you see that the United States is protecting Israel over its own interests, over its own soldiers, even to the extent that they have literal recording of IDF soldiers acknowledging that this is an American Navy ship that they are shooting at intentionally with knowledge. And the United States goes ahead and covers that up. So who's in power? This little tiny thing they're calling Israel is in power over this massive nation. And how are they taking the United States down? Well, it appears through money, through a false religious narrative that I don't believe for a second many people in Congress believe, or that this White House believes. There's a reason why they're using that religious narrative to lead everybody else astray. And I believe we're looking at the reason right now, because there is blackmail that has occurred, that is Epstein's dead, doesn't have anything to do with him. There is blackmail occurring with the foreign nation that Epstein was involved with Mossad. Okay, then it says, after coming to an agreement with him, he will act deceitfully, and with only a few people he will rise to power. I'm actually going to skip ahead a couple of verses to 25. With a large army he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. So that's talking about Israel is going to stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and powerful army, but he will not be able to stand because of the plots devised against him. Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in battle. The two kings, with their hearts bent on evil, will sit at the same table and lie to each other, but to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time. Okay? What you're seeing right now, and what you've been seeing, you saw Elon Musk have his freak out. Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in battle. You are seeing this decomposition of this administration over this issue. Representatives from Fox News, absolute prostitutes to Trump, they're coming out and they're speaking. They're saying, we're not satisfied with the results of this so-called investigation that Pam Bondi, into the Epstein files that Pam Bondi is reporting on. Dan Bongino isn't showing up to work and is threatening to leave the FBI. Tucker Carlson, who campaigned for President Trump, he's calling it out. Kash Patel, who's a flippity flopper, of course, he's not going to leave his job. He'll keep working. He'll keep covering up for the pedophile, narrative. I mean, that's disgusting. But he did say something, but he's still going to stay at his job. He's still going to work for this. And obviously we have Elon Musk, who's taken a very hard stance, even to the extent of calling for another party. But this is what's happening. We got less than 3 months now. Thank God. For me anyway, I'm just about out of here. Less than 3 months before the Antichrist rises to power. We're right on time with Scripture, according to what I've been telling you, according to the timeline. So go discern that with God.